Hello guys, welcome to Monitoring and Evaluation Made Simple. I'm your host, Coach Alexander. I'm very glad that you've joined me today. I know I've been awful quiet, but I'm so happy to be back. It's been a busy period, and I want to thank all my students and all my friends around the world who've been giving me so much support. I'm greatly humbled. Now, for those of you who are here for the first time, my name is Coach Alexander, and I've been doing monitoring and evaluation for 10 years now, over 10 years. Today, we're going to be looking at a very good topic: monitoring and evaluation tools, instruments that you need to be using when you're undertaking M&E activities. So now I did introduce myself. For those of you who are here for the very first time, I'm Coach Alexander. I've been doing this for over 10 years. Please subscribe to this channel so that you get all the latest updates in M&E. I want to mention that you should watch this video from the beginning to the end so that you derive the maximum benefit in terms of this topic. So this is the outline for this discussion. What are M&E tools? List of M&E tools, how tools are developed and used, and what you should do today. Okay, so this is a video which I want you to watch from beginning to end. It's going to take roughly 10 to 15 minutes of your time, but believe me, this is something that's going to help you in your workplace. Okay, so what are M&E tools? In simple terms, if you look at everything that is done in the construction industry, okay, I'm sure you know these people who do the buildings of houses and also skyscrapers. For them to fulfill that function, there are certain instruments that they need to have handy. And you see those tools are kept in a toolbox. It could be a screwdriver, it could be a hammer, it could be a mallet, or even a saw, so that they can construct things and put things together. So those are tools, those are instruments that help them fulfill their function. So even us in the M&E world, or in the humanitarian or NGO world, or whatever you want to call it, for us to fulfill M&E functions, we need instruments, okay? And those instruments are going to help us get the results that we want. Now, when it comes to M&E activities, there are basically three activities that are mainly done in monitoring and evaluation. You've got the planning, you've got the actual monitoring, then you've got the evaluation. So those are the three main activities you must keep in mind. And I've brought this up deliberately because as we go on, I'm going to refer to these three stages. Okay, now, in terms of the tools, we've got different types of M&E tools. That's something you need to remember. We've got the planning tools, which are used to plan the interventions that we're going to fulfill. And then we've got the data collection tools. Okay, so now the planning tools are those that are used for the design of the project or program. And the reason why we, as M&E professional, we need these tools is because in most cases we are called upon to help with the design of a project. Our input into the process is important, especially in the defining of the indicators, because remember, it is the indicators that we use to monitor whether a project has succeeded or not. Then you've got the data collection tools. Now, one thing I need to mention, please do not be misled by anybody. The thing is that the majority of time that we spend as professionals is in the data collection, analysis, and report writing. That is really our core business. Okay, so we need to have these tools in order to fulfill those functions. Now, if you look at these numbers, I've listed the tools. Okay, these are the main tools, but of course there are additional tools, especially when you read books. Now, the first one is the problem and solution tree approach. It's a very useful tool. This is categorized as a planning tool, And the reason being is that when it comes to developing of a project, this can come in handy, the problem and solution tree approach. So what this means is that you define a problem, and when you identify that problem, you come up with solutions. Those solutions are what feed into the design of the project, and they also help in coming up with activities that will fulfill the solution. Okay. Now the other two, I'm sure you're very aware of the logical framework approach. This is a planning tool because it helps you understand in summary form how your activities will translate into the goals that you want to achieve. This is also an important tool when we are doing the M&E. It's a good reference point. If you've seen in my past videos, I may have mentioned this, that this is actually like the Bible for us. But I want to mention this point, and this is my appeal to any M&E officer around the world who's watching this video. If for some reason you are having challenges conducting M&E activities in your organization, just refer to the log frame, because the log frame gives you a summary of everything that needs to be implemented and what you should be monitoring. Normally, if I don't want to read the whole project document, I'll just go to the page where the log frame is situated, and then I'm going to start my M&E activities based on what the log frame is telling me. Now let's go to the data collection tools. You've got the obvious ones, which are questionnaires, the attendance schedules, and checklists. I know some of you have always told me through your comments that I talk too much, but please, you forgive me today because I want to explain something about questionnaires. If you've noticed, in some of these organizations, you have questionnaires that are very bulky. And sometimes I sit down and wonder, why do we have bulky questionnaires? Why should they be so big? Okay. Anyway, size is not the issue, but I think we need to pay attention to whether the questions we are actually asking are feeding into our project, because you may be collecting a lot of data, and some of this data is not going to even be used by your organization. If we were in a room today, I was going to ask you this question: how many people have fallen into a situation whereby they are asked to collect so much data, but very little of that data they've collected is actually being used for decision making? I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have raised their hands if we were in one room today. So the issue is this: if you come up with a questionnaire, let it be speaking to the log frame. And that is why the log frame and the data collection tools are actually closely linked. Another issue is, another data collection tool is the focus group discussion guide. There's also what is known as the key informant interview guide. Sorry about that. Okay, so now the thing is that the guide, the key informant interview guide, is what you use as you are facilitating discussions with community members. Okay, so that guide is a tool, and it's a tool that should be developed by your organization using the right approach, which I'm going to talk about. Okay, then you've also got the visual aids. Okay, these are just basically the things that you use visually in order to tell a story about your project intervention. So it's a kind of data collection methodology which I have seen being used, but I personally don't normally use it. But all of these I've mentioned are actually 100% effective, and I would urge you people who are watching this video to use it. Okay, now I talked about the tools, the questionnaires. Sometimes we have bulky questionnaires and very little of the information that comes out of them is being used by the organization. Now I want to talk about how do you actually develop data collection tools. There is a step-by-step approach. I've listed 5 steps, but in actual sense there are 8 steps. I deliberately didn't go further than this because these are basically the main ones. Okay, so the first thing when you develop a tool, the first thing when you develop a questionnaire is first you need to identify all the indicators that your project will be monitoring. And it's pretty easy. If you want, you can just copy and paste the list of indicators and put them somewhere. Put them aside somewhere. If there are 18 of them, there are 18 of them. If there are 20, there are 20. So you just need to list and identify them. Identify and list, rather. Then the second step is to identify the type of data that is required for each of these indicators. Why is this important? Because if your indicator requires secondary data, then all that means is that you won't need to go into the field to interview anybody. All you do is just rely on records that are already existing somewhere. Okay, so you need to define whether you are going to use, whether this indicator requires primary data, secondary data, qualitative data, or quantitative data. Let's say for example, you've identified an indicator and it requires qualitative data. Now we all know that qualitative data is linked to attitudes and perceptions of people. So if I asked you what kind of data collection method will be required for qualitative data, I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with me. Things like focus group discussions or key informant interviews could be the best ways to collect the data, the best method, because these rely on perceptions of people. Okay, so step 3 is to identify the appropriate data collection method. So after you've established that this indicator requires qualitative data, then the method that you would recommend is probably key informant interviews or focus group discussions. After you have recommended the appropriate data collection method, you pilot test the tool in the field. And after you've pilot test in the field, you bring back whatever findings you have and then improve the tool and launch it. Now the reason why you pilot test is because you want to ensure that you identify the weaknesses that exist with the tool that you've developed, because these weaknesses may affect data quality. So the issue is that you want to ensure that any weaknesses that are identified in the pilot testing phase are corrected by the time you launch. Okay, now I have this question. It's a question as well as a challenge for any M&D professional in any organization. What should you do today knowing that you have this information given to you for free? I want to admonish that it is critical that you ensure that every tool that is in your organization is adequately linked to what you are trying to fulfill in your project. And I want to emphasize this point again, especially with the data collection tools. You need to ensure that the current tools you have are speaking to the indicators. If they are not speaking to any of the indicators, it means you need to revise the tool. Okay? I guess that's the only advice I can give you. So I want to thank you so much for attending today's session. And remember, you can write to me, especially in relation to the 6 months coaching program. I've been your host, Coach Alexander, and see you on the other side. Bye.